My name is Dennis Clarke, and I work as a software engineer, but I'm much more interested in philosophy and music, and that is classical music, and to a certain extent mathematics, becoming more interested in the mathematical side of philosophy later, it seems. I mean, I'm just the kind of person who can't stop thinking. You know, maybe there's a bit of noise in there that doesn't need to be in there. And I've always been insatiably curious. When I was a little boy, my idea of fun on a rainy day was to sit and read the encyclopedia. That may say something not so good about me, but so the curiosity is always important. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a way of life because I have this other career. Although ironically, that career has helped my ability to work in philosophy such as I have, being just an amateur. But yes, it's a never-ending thing. I wake up in the middle. Well, I don't wake up in the middle of the night, but I've had some really good ideas in rather strange places, or at least oh, I need to go look up that passage and so and see if there's anything relevant there. And I love that, going around and digging for the hidden nuggets, I guess you could call them, and hoping to find some undiscovered bit in there that's been overlooked. And of course, a lot of that's because of the nature of ancient philosophy, that we've lost so much. So we're back to trying to solve the difficult puzzle. I think it really does go back to the words. Or maybe it's not a lover of knowledge, but more the seeker of truth, and who's determined to get to the bottom of things, whatever the particular subject is, and to be rigorous about that, to not be frivolous about it, not to get off on tangents that are irrelevant, and I think not to be just purveyors and obsessors of jargon. It's just completely superfluous, really. I don't believe in this split between science and philosophy. That was a bad thing in the 17th century, and I think it's caused a tremendous amount of damage. And I also think I think a good philosopher has to understand how the mind works as much as possible. I think if I were teaching philosophy, I'd throw in a big dollop of neuroscience. If I were setting up a curriculum. Because what tool do we have but our brains? Well, I have to say I've never read any more beautiful prose than the Phaedrus. When I get to prose, I'll just pick it up. And it's just so gorgeous. But I do believe in dialectic, and the things he says in there about, you can't really disclose these things. You have to achieve them yourself through your own work and striving towards it. And although I do think the bit about beauty is the fact that we're able to have that as an important feature of our minds and our culture is really rather extraordinary, I think. Even going back into apparently to the Homo erectus, and that wonderful phrase of the poet Robertson Jefferson, divinely superfluous beauty. And that's very ideal. That's very Platonic. I think it's very ideal. But the inclusion of that in philosophy, and again, it's not a rational thing really. It just shows that not all of philosophy deals with logic and rationality. There is that other value thing. I don't know that maybe we're unique to be able, at least on this planet. I don't know if maybe cats have a sense of aesthetic. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But it's something that really ought to be cherished, and it does have a huge value. And the fact that Plato is so concerned with that is, I think, one of his strong points. But I do believe in dialectic. I think you have to, I think, always keep that in mind when you're reading Plato, that he said, I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. You need to work it out yourself. And I know my own self, and just working in software, that I don't know how many times I've figured out a very difficult problem by talking to someone else. But the talking was not in any way extraneous. It seemed I needed to voice the parameters of the problem, especially if I'm trying to come up with an algorithm that's really difficult. And then suddenly I'm explaining what the problem is, and bang, the solution comes popping into my head. And so I always think about that when reading anything about dialectic and Plato. But then it's this huge self-involvement. It's not some, again, extraneous or kind of rote thing. It's life. It becomes a part of your life, experience, and you're putting yourself into that, and you couldn't maybe reach those understandings of some particular philosophical problem unless you do that work. And, it is work too, and it isn't maybe always that easy, and you might go down some blind paths here and there, but if you get there in the end, there's a wonderful just feeling, like, oh, I figured that one out. But I really think he's onto something there. Now, it's unfortunate for us historically that he didn't tell somebody, or maybe he did in the 7th letter, but I don't know what he really did believe, just so we'd know. And since we don't have a time machine to go back and enter the academy and be a good student, so no real shortcuts there. You just have to. It's like an actor preparing for a play. You've got to do the work to build up the character. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, I don't think there are any real shortcuts there, because you're going to miss something, if nothing else. I would think if you don't get the full picture when you're going through this kind of dialectical process. Well, I think love is a kind of dedication to another person, not in a selfish way, and not for heaven's sakes, not a possessive way, not a selfish way, but in a way that you're willing to sacrifice your ego for the sake of the beloved. It has to be very internalized like that. And if your boyfriend likes to go off in the woods for 2 days every other week, let him go. Don't cling. You certainly have to respect boundaries too. But that means you have to have the faith, and so there's got to be an underlying true bond going both ways, that you each get your freedom. But it's certainly not a possessive thing, and not at all. You have to also make sure you compromise. No two humans are always going to get what they want.
What does love have to do with philosophy?
Well, I think it has a lot to do, because you're have to tamp down your ego and give yourself to what you're studying. And remember always that the text, or whatever the work is what's important, not your, oh, I discovered this, look at me, some great little me. Because it's not ever about me. Same thing happens in music. The really great musicians are always rather humble before the music, before the work of the composer, and they try their best to reproduce it in a kind of faithfulness to the work. And of course they end up creating something that's personal, but it's never about them. It's always about the music. Absolutely same thing with philosophy, because you have to clear yourself out. You have to empty yourself of all those silly little things that we can fall into. Anybody is a human of, what's the word? Well, selfishness, but also hoping to be like famous or whatever, or, you know, wanting brownie points for every little thing you figure out. You really have to flush all that out. I mean, not that you can perfectly, of course, but it's about the text in the case of handed down philosophy or whatever, again, whatever form it takes. That has to come first. So you have to have a love of the text.
All right, one more question. Let's see, what I want it to be. I try to get some funny ones to make you laugh and smile. So, if Aristotle and Plato were in a knife fight, who would win?
Well, unfortunately, Aristotle, because Plato always was afraid to, I think, soil his hands with the mundane. And of course, since Aristotle was, I think he was best known as a biologist, wasn't he? He would probably have some nasty little cutting implement for opening up oysters or something. So I think poor Plato would just, but I might be wrong.
All right.
He might pull out the Machaira and just whack him.
All right, what philosopher would you like to get drunk with?
Oh,
And
well.
why?
Well, I might say something people wouldn't expect. Say Lucretius. Because I don't care for the Epicurean philosophy at all, but I do love Lucretius' poem. It's glorious. I love the passage about Venus at the beginning. Well, it certainly wouldn't be Plotinus.
You would be a bore.
I might actually say Damascus, because he's so clever and seems such a modern person, and he would, of course, have all the best gossip. We know that, because he obviously was very good at that. So he'd probably be the most fun. But just in a perverse way, it might be fun to get Proclus drunk.
Oh, nice.
I mean, think of how much it would take. Whereas with him, you may took like 2 drinks, and then again, he might start pouring forth beautiful, like, verse just out of nowhere, and praises of the great mother. And that would be nice too.